For this review, I'm looking at a handful of genre films that all happen to start with the letter D. I don't know why that is. Of course, proving that there's an exception to every rule. Well, there's one movie that doesn't. So, here we are looking at Daybreakers, The Descent Part 2, District 13, Ultimatum, Dead Snow, Deadly Impact, and the decidedly non-D starting Elektra, although it is the director's cut, so I guess I get credit for that D. First up, we have Daybreakers, the recent vampire film starring Ethan Hawke and Willem Dafoe that made a very little splash at the box office and then was largely ignored and probably will quickly be forgotten about. Although I have to say I actually quite enjoyed Daybreakers. It is one of the better vampire films I've seen in quite some time. The vampire action is almost secondary in a way to the science fiction elements of the storyline. It takes place in a future where the entire population of the world has pretty much become vampires, and there's very few humans left who are basically being farmed for blood. And what I really liked about the film, in addition to kind of an intriguing storyline and the fact that it kept me guessing almost up until the very end of the film, is just what a great kind of futuristic vampire world it created. Everything from a subwalk, which is a subterranean kind of tunnel system that vampires can use to move around during the day with, to the advertisements and technology that are used in the film. It's a really complete kind of movie. It definitely knows exactly what it wants to be. And I found it to be actually very entertaining and actually, like I said, keep me guessing until the end. So it certainly is worth watching. The film is available on both Blu-ray and DVD, though they have the same extra features. The Blu-ray, of course, actually looks much better. Now, this is a film that switches back and forth from a more colorful kind of outside world perspective to a more monochromatic vampire world perspective. So the colors are definitely not as pop off the screen bright in your face as you might expect, but that's because that's the way the filmmakers intended it. Overall, the picture quality is excellent, clarity is terrific, and you really have no complaints with the high definition transfer at work here in this film. As for those aforementioned extra features, as I mentioned, both the Blu-ray and the DVD contain the same extras. You get a commentary by the directors of the film, the Spierig brothers, a making-of featurette, a short film by the directors, which is actually worth watching. It's quite interesting. A storyboard animatic scene comparison, a poster gallery, which would have been cooler if there was more to it, a trailer, and a digital copy of the film. Daybreakers probably isn't going to satisfy the really hardcore vampire enthusiasts out there, as it really isn't your typical vampire movie. But if you like a good vampire flick or a good science fiction flick, then I definitely recommend checking it out. Next up, we have The Descent Part 2. Now, The Descent is one of my favorite horror movies, probably hands down. I really, really love the original film. It's one of Neil Marshall's films. He also directed Dog Soldiers and Doomsday, and I really love it. He also apparently has a thing for movies that start with the letter D. I'm not quite sure what that's about. I did not have high hopes for The Descent Part 2 because Neil Marshall is not directing, although he did executive produce it. However, the film's director this time around was an editor on the first film, and I have to say I actually ended up really liking The Descent Part 2. It's not as good as the original, but it does pick up pretty much exactly where the first film ends, at least if you watch the American version. The British version ends differently, and the original version ends differently. The American version was sort of soft-pedaled for American audiences, but going by that ending, this film picks up right where it left off and continues the story from there in a fairly believable way, actually. Lead actress Shauna McDonald is back, which was a huge coup. There's some other fun appearances, even in flashbacks and stuff from the original cast members, and there are plot developments that happen in this movie because of what happened in the first movie. So all in all, it's actually a pretty worthy sequel. It's not, again, as good as the first film, but that's because the first film, in my opinion, is so great that few films come close to it. In terms of extra features on this DVD-only release, we get a commentary, a making-of, a storyboard gallery, and some deleted scenes. So nothing too out of the ordinary, but nothing too bad either. This is definitely one, if you like The Descent, I would say this one is highly recommended as well. Following that, we have District 13 Ultimatum, which is the sequel to the highly popular District 13 film that came out a few years back featuring parkour as a sort of martial arts in the future film. It takes place, it's sort of an Escape from New York-ish story where Paris has been kind of walled off and made into this ghetto, prison-type ghetto. I haven't seen the first film, to be honest with you, so I can't talk too much about that. And that's really my only complaint about the second film, is that I wish I had been able to watch the first film first. Having not seen seen that, I don't know exactly. They don't really go into what set the world the way that it is in the film. But I can say that as an action movie, District 13 Ultimatum severely kicks ass. There's some really amazing action scenes in this film. Even subtitled in French, subtitled in English for a French language film, you can't go wrong. It's extremely enjoyable, extremely action-packed, and I have to say I really loved watching it, and now I'm definitely going to go back and track down the first film. Available also on Blu-ray and DVD, District 13 looks fantastic. Really keeps up with the action. The colors are very vivid. You never lose any image clarity to all the craziness that's happening on screen. And while large portions of the film do take place at night, the shadow delineation never lets you down. For extra features, you get a making of, a music video which incorporates making of footage, a collection of deleted and extended scenes, and another making of from HDNet. Next up, we have Deadly Impact, which is a surprisingly good direct-to-video thriller starring Joe Pantoliano and Sean Patrick Flanery, once again proving that Sean Patrick Flanery is a better actor than people give him credit for and a better leading man. I found this film extremely enjoyable, even though it borrows plot elements from a lot of kind of movies such as like 12 Rounds, even like Die Hard with a Vengeance. It sort of has the bad guy sending the good guys on wild goose chases, but it's actually a pretty taut thriller. And I found it to be pretty intense and very enjoyable. It certainly was an easy way to kill an hour and a half. So if you like thrillers that don't require too much thought and don't require too much believability necessarily, then this one is definitely worth checking out. No extra features on this disc. Dead Snow is a great Norwegian zombie movie. Yes, it is a foreign zombie movie, so you do have to read some subtitles unless you want to listen to some really bad dubbing. But it's a lot of fun. It's kind of like... not like Shaun of the Dead really in spirit, but it is a sort of a horror comedy. There's a lot of humor mixed in with the horror. The zombies in this film are pretty good. It's a pretty, not a scary movie per se, but it certainly has an intensity to it that ratchets up from time to time. And I really did enjoy seeing this film. It's released as a 2-disc special edition, which includes 7 making-of featurettes focusing on things like the visual effects and the makeup. And then you get a collection of outtakes as well as 2 trailers. So if you're a zombie enthusiast, I definitely recommend checking out Dead Snow. It's not hardcore zombie. It's not going to satisfy you if all you're looking for is blood and guts, but it does have a pretty fair amount of that stuff as well. And finally, we have the Elektra Director's Cut. Elektra, of course, being a spin-off from the Daredevil movie with Ben Affleck. Elektra stars Jennifer Garner, who, of course, is horribly miscast as Elektra, as any comics reader will know. And I don't mean that as a slight against Jennifer Garner. She's just not right for the part of Elektra. She never was, and I don't think she ever will be. The resulting movie, through no fault of Jennifer Garner's, is kind of a mess. It's really not a great film. It's a decent film that has a few decent action sequences, but even those really don't live up to the promise of this film. It's not one of those movies that's kind of got a bad plot and bad acting, but survives because it has amazing action sequences, like District 13 Ultimatum, for example. It just doesn't have much going for it at all. That being said, it's not the kind of film that you hate. You kind of watch it and go, meh, it was all right. I've seen better. I've seen worse. A lot of scantily clad hot chicks running around, and that's not the worst thing in the world, especially if you fall into the movie's main demographic, which I assume is 15-year-old boys. Everybody else will probably be a little bit let down. But as terms of Blu-rays go, it's pretty good. You get a solid upgrade from the DVD in terms of video quality. It's nothing to, write home about, but it looks good. Crisp picture, solid colors, good shadow delineation, and of course the surround soundtrack is pretty solid. This is an action film. It won't disappoint you in that regard. In terms of extra features, you'd get a commentary from the director Rob Bowman, a collection of deleted scenes, a collection of alternate and extended scenes, a 2-part making of that's pretty in-depth, a multi-angle featurette, and then 2 documentaries look at the mythology of Elektra. So in terms of that, if you like the movie, you do get a lot of extra bang for your buck. Overall, this is a really good collection of movies, but without a doubt, you should absolutely check out The Descent Part 2 and District 13 Ultimatum. And I would say that both Deadly Impact and Dead Snow are also recommended films. And Daybreakers as well is going to skirt right between the recommended and the highly recommended. I did really enjoy it a lot. So there you go. All the D movies plus 1 E film. Enjoy.